This workshop on open structures offers a procedure to be used on complex open structures that will simplify it for you. It's most useful on umbellifers where you need to see through the stalks to the mini umbels on the other side and show the backs of them. If you want to show that you can see through something, the simplest way is to draw something darker behind it. A useful rule is to draw all the forward-facing umbels first and then draw in the back ones. Now let's draw, starting with the stem and the place where all the umbel stalks join. That's called the capitulum, and the stalks are called pedicels. This is the first one coming out towards you. The best idea is to keep your head and your model really, really still and look and see where on the overall shape the seed heads come. Draw them in and then join them to the capitulum with the pedicel, like this. That is a quick way to do perspective by doing the items that are in the same plane as your own face and joining them up with the top of the stalk. That is a shorthand and a short way of achieving the perspective. This pencil is only an ordinary HB, and it's not what you would normally use for fine work, but it shows up much better under camera so you can see it. Also, it's quite easy to rub out, which we need to do quite a lot with this procedure. The paper here is a Scholler's hammer with a very highly polished surface. It's very smooth and useful for this kind of work. Also, it's stiff, so I don't need to attach it to a board, and I can move it around under the camera so that you can see quite easily what is going on here. Here we have a seed casing falling down in front. Which you see we're approaching in the same way and joining it up to the capitulum. Also, where the pedicels join the capitulum will also help to give it the sense of perspective. When you come to do the back ones in, they won't show on the front. Here's your model again, looking pretty scruffy after a winter out. Now you see I've turned the paper so that I can draw into the curve using the arc that my pencil and hand make together. It keeps it steady. Also, keep your hand firmly supported on the paper. Now take out the marks that go over the front structure, because this goes behind. Keep this going throughout your drawing so that you don't get muddled about what's in front and what's behind. That's terribly important. Now we've done most of the front structures and we can start to put in the back ones, taking care to make sure that we do every stalk with a single line and keep it smooth. Stopping and starting will show on your painting and it won't look as though it's growing. There are few things worse than a beautiful graceful stalk changing angle in midair or coming out from behind a leaf at a different angle. So draw each stem with a single line and then take out the areas where it has crossed in front of something when it should have gone behind. Keep careful tally of all of this so that you don't get into a muddle before the end. I've turned the paper here again so that my hand is more comfortable to draw into the arc of the stem. This rubber's a useful gadget for really narrow areas for rubbing out. which is useful on the stems. It's a bit like a propelling pencil and it keeps rigid. There is another way which I will show you in a minute. This little piece of rubber is cut from a larger piece. It's quite keeps quite rigid if you cut it in a triangular shape, and you can use the very narrow end for these small areas, and the wider end gives it rigidity. You can sharpen your pencils in the same way by making a wedge, which gives you a very narrow fine point in one direction, and the other direction gives it strength. So now we're looking through the front stalks to the shapes behind and putting them in almost as if they were in front, and keeping the lines smooth and lively. As this builds up, it gives our seed head three-dimensionality. Now, as the stalk goes in, you're going to take it down to the back of the capitulum, like that, and take it out where it crosses in front of something that it should be crossing behind. Now we're getting ready to paint. We've put in enough of that structure to think about putting on some colour, and we will start with the back and work forward. We only need two colours to start with, that's neutral and raw sienna, and we'll start at the back putting in some ghost shapes, if you like, a single wash of a mixture of those two colours. By starting at the back, you can strengthen up and give extra tone to the forward ones as you work forward. If you want to show up something against a dark background, then it's just as easy to take out the area where the front light piece will be with a damp brush. It's probably easier to do it this way than it is to paint round, though of course you will be painting very dry at this stage. This is a perfect place to try this out. You can use the dark bits where the stem is rotting to show up a light stalk coming away in front. This is an opportunity to paint a little bit wetter again, and there are some wonderful streaks and patches of tone in the stem where it's beginning to rot. You can let the colours run and merge and put on any detail later with a fine dry brush. With a damp brush, take out the area that you want to be light, and you can paint dark, more dark in behind it later if you wish. Keep an eye on your model while all this is going on, because there are all sorts of clues and colours in there. So that the all-important pedicels are going to show up on the joins on the capitulum, you're going to need to get some dark in behind them and carefully paint round the joins, not forgetting that the angle of each one is critical to the perspective of the whole plant. We're sticking with neutral and raw sienna for these colours, though I will add a little light red for some of the foreground stems and pods later on as they come forward. You may have noticed that I've used the same size brush for everything. It's a sable size nought with a very fine point, and the point means that I can do any fine work with it, but also the belly of the brush carries quite a lot of pigment, and I haven't got to keep dipping it into the paint. This all helps to get a smooth, trouble-free result. Be careful also of any drops of water which may have come from your water pot and be sitting on the ferrule. If they run down the ferrule when you are concentrating on something else, you're going to get a blob where you don't want it. Now we can get a bit more dark in, and that will show up the light stems very well. A lot of this will need tidying up again at the end. So there are some more opportunities here for showing up light against dark, and it will mean going back to some of your ghost shapes that were in the background initially. It's an opportunity to put in a little bit more detail if you want it, and also where the seeds themselves are nice and dark, you can place them strategically behind some of the light stems. Because you paint from light to dark in watercolour rather than the other way around in oils, the dark seeds, the very dark seeds, which can take the eye and would be hard to get rid of if you didn't want them, they tend to go in last. But here we have an opportunity to demonstrate the foreground stem. This pod up here is middle ground, so it will show completely at the top, but the pedicel will go into the top of the capitulum, right down in the middle of the top. So there'll be something in front of it as it comes down. But it is highly visible, and it's an opportunity to put in some nice detail here. You may want to use a smaller brush for this one, and frequent close reference to your model will be inspirational. The wonky dark seeds are such wonderful shapes. Then moving further down, now here's another golden opportunity down on the middle of the back here, where we can put in a little extra tone for detail, and then take out the pale stem that goes in front of it. Just a damp brush, that's all that's needed, and go on stroking it down until that white has reappeared. If you want later on, when you're tidying up, you can put a tiny weeny dark line against one side of it, and that will give it extra welly. Some of these seed cases are so worn that they've gone very light and transparent with ragged edges. The best way to show that something is transparent is to just show the shadow of whatever there is behind it, not too slavishly, or it'll get the wrong impression altogether. But where it overlaps, or where a stem runs down behind, just a little bit of shadow will indicate an element of transparency. This one is on the front, so it can overlap everything behind it, and there's no need to take anything out. This has reached the point where there's a lot of detail now to go in. We've finished with the main structure, and these little fairy cases have all very obligingly got quite firm edges, some of them roll edges, and it's fairly easy to put that in with a dark line and a little bit of shading. Here some seeds are showing up behind, half behind the cases. So here I'm strengthening up some of the both background and foreground stems that go in, and it's worth mentioning here that if you can possibly avoid overlap, that is to say one line performing two purposes, then that is very much to the advantage of clarity. Few things are more confusing than having one line that is doing two jobs. So try to keep all your stems separate, and if necessary outline them a little. Here you see a lot of tidying up has been done. Pencil lines taken out and replaced where necessary with a line of fine paint. Enjoy your painting. Goodbye.